Pony Island 2 Panda Circus has been revealed for a while now, and since then we have gained even more info about it from Daniel Mullen's tweets, interviews, and its Steam page. So I thought I'd make a video covering everything we know so far about the upcoming game. I'll be covering gameplay, characters, the story, and a few theories of my own at the end. So let's get right into it. Gameplay-wise, this game looks to be a mix between Pony Island and the Hex. The trailer displays many scenes of the player in an almost arcade-style type of 2D shooter, very akin to Pony Island's gameplay, except instead of being a four-legged laser-shooting pony, you're a sort of Mongolian horse archer, so pretty much the same thing. The trailer also reveals many coding puzzles, just as there were in Pony Island, although they do seem to have upped their complexity. For one last comparison, we see many shots of unique options and even puzzles within the game's settings, a really cool mechanic returning from Pony Island. Now I say Panda Circus is also similar to the Hex because of the remarkable variety of games we see in the trailer alone. There's a golfing minigame, a top-down brawler of sorts, the multiple aforementioned Pony Island inspired games, and presumably much more. In the Hex, the in-between moments from game to game were filled with a lot of dialogue, but Panda Circus seems to have an intriguing new system for the player to move around the map. We see the player traversing the overworld on horse, with meters for both hunger and thirst, as well as the very terrain type being taken into consideration, all suggesting we will have to engage with some resource management mechanics. On top of that, the game will have plenty of more realistic 3D sections. Improving on the Inscryption formula, Daniel confirms that he has kept the same detailed art style while improving it so that the player can now move freely instead of on predetermined rails. In this 3D area, the player will find a special USB stick, which will hold your growing inventory. According to the interview, the areas in the 3D space are what link together many different arcade cabinets, which they themselves bring us to the pixelated games, all accessed with the USB stick. The high fidelity of the 3D style on such a large scale is only possible thanks to Inscryption's success, from which Daniel has been able to hire a ton of talented artists and game designers to help him make Panda Circus his biggest game yet. Here are just some of the names he's mentioned who have already contributed to the game. While we should always avoid bringing expectations too high, it's clear that the scope of this game will be on another level compared to Daniel's past games. As the scope of this game expands, so does the number of characters involved on our journey. We see a huge variety of NPCs in the trailer, but in terms of main characters, we still only have a few ideas so far. King Yan, also known as the Chinese god of death, is well featured in the trailer, being played by... Is that world-renowned content creator, ProZD?
No, you gotta tickle their balls a little bit.
This antagonist will be our first nemesis, employing weeping angels and ancient Chinese dragons against us. But Daniel confirms that he'll only be the villain for part 1. Either way, I'm very much looking forward to ProZD's performance.
Tickle them more!
We only see a short few scenes with this small panda. He talks about a panda massacre from which he was spared, and introduces us to the Panda Circus, indicating that he might have, at one point, been the troop leader. The fact that he shows up during fights against King Yan, as well as the name of the game, all imply that he'll be a sort of companion for our journey, similar to the Hopeless Soul in the original Pony Island. We can only hope our friendship doesn't end the same way. While it might be desperate to hope that the Lucky Carter will return after his untimely demise in Inscryption, Daniel mentions that I think it would be a crime if he didn't make it in there somewhere. Far from a promise, but enough to give hope that Kevin Saxby will return, made even more likely with this game's theme revolving around death. While we don't see any definite proof of Satan returning in the trailer, there's no way the devil isn't coming back in this game. As the main antagonist in Pony Island, the one behind the ARG of all of Daniel Mullen's games, all on top of the frequent satanic imagery in the trailer, it'd be hard to believe that he won't have a prominent role in the game. The only question is, what role will he play? Could he take over as the villain once King Yan is defeated? Or will he perhaps take on a different role? Much of the trailer shows the player working to unlock something, and maybe that something could be the devil himself. As mentioned when talking about the gameplay, this game will take place just about everywhere. We see clips that look like the real world, but there will also be open, realistic 3D spaces within the game. And within those spaces, arcade cabinets, each with their own unique worlds inside of them, giving Daniel a lot of freedom to bring the player wherever he pleases. So far, the game has two very prominent themes, death and Chinese. No, not you, Mao Zedong. Now, while we can assume death will stay a prominent theme throughout the game, there's a debate to be had on whether the Chinese one will stay relevant throughout the later acts. We know that King Yan, the Chinese god of death, is only the antagonist for the first act, perhaps implying that after his defeat, we'll confront other gods of death from other cultures, or perhaps it will just be other Chinese gods. The theme of circus or clowns will also be prevalent, as the name of the game suggests, but we're not too sure how it'll come into play. We see a few clowns in the trailer, but they're kinda just sitting around, not doing too much. With all the info we've covered till now, we can still only make a pretty vague guess at the story. The first act seems like it will be a journey through a Chinese-themed underworld, where we meet the panda along with many other NPCs who will guide us throughout our travels. But assuming it follows a similar path to Daniel's other games, there will be dramatic and unpredictable changes after the first act. Maybe it'll turn into a story about breaking out of the Death Realm back into the real world, or saving the souls of all those stuck in the land of the dead. We can really only guess. On top of that, we still don't know where this game fits in with all the other Daniel Mullen works. Pony Island is already theorized to be about freeing the devil from his arcade prison, so it's weird to see so much imagery in the trailer suggesting that we're freeing him or something else again. Perhaps he was only partially freed in Pony Island, and now we, knowing or unknowingly, complete the job. If the Lucky Cutter does make his way into this game, then it would need to be before his death in Inscryption, or perhaps it could still be after if he's showing up in the land of the dead. The blue triangle on our USB stick indicates the presence of GameWorks. Did they build this world as they did with so many other video games? Or are they simply guiding us through it to further their own goals? Maybe the circus theme could indicate the return of Sato, going through the aftermath of killing the Lucky Cutter and finding the old data. We see Goobert for a brief moment in the 3D realm. Could this mean Pio3 successfully carried out his master plan? The Steam store page does mention the Transcendence. All in all, it's impossible to say for sure at this point, but I'm very interested to hear any theories you guys have. There are so many possibilities, and the only thing we know for sure is that it'll be a fantastic game. Hopefully we get some new info soon, but it'd be best if we as a community don't rush Daniel, in the hopes of him making the best possible piece of art he can. Until then, check out my other Daniel Mullen's lore videos, and thanks for watching.
Favorite, subscribe, retweet, reblog, tickle my balls.